Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke. Happy Monday. If that's some people, that's not very happy, but yeah, this is actually, like I said, this is one of the days where I'm usually taking a little more time for myself, but I actually do have quite a bit that I'm going to be doing today. I have a lot of new things that are going on that I'm excited about talking about. As for our weather report, things are actually much cooler now. It's really nice out. The temperature's gonna get down. I think we're gonna have one hot day on Wednesday, but then the temps are gonna be summer temps, but they're not gonna be outrageous. Because last week was just like super bake. We were just baking like all week long. And I find personally, I don't know. I mean, people are different. I know some people who absolutely thrive in the hot weather. They say, "Oh my gosh, I love this. What's wrong with you? I can't wait to be outside." And I'm like, well, I don't like heat stroke. And I am at an age where perhaps this is not something that wears as well for me. But I have other friends who absolutely hate it and like say I'd rather be in the middle of a snowstorm. So you do have your different extremes there. But I have this whole I don't know. I have a whole thing about I don't like it to be super, super hot. I'm not necessarily a fan of super, super cold either. I like it to be, speaking in Fahrenheit terms, I like it to be roughly mid-70s down to maybe 50. Maybe even the upper 40s would be okay, like on a nice crisp like autumn night. But that's kind of the range that I like. And I like it to be cool and a little bit breezy. And today, it's going to be a really nice day, and the temperatures, there's actually a front coming through, so I think it's going to be kind of windy this afternoon. So it's going to be nice. It's going to have that kind of feel to it after a week of somewhat oppressive heat. At least, again, in my book, some people were out there, living it up and loving it. So, all depends on where you're coming from. But, so this week, I want to talk a little bit about, I'm going to talk a little bit about Rouhani again. I did talk about it yesterday. I did actually have my first Rouhani client yesterday. So there was somebody who kind of was like, I'm excited to do this, let's jump in and do it. And I'll be interested to hear that person's feedback today after they've had the healing. But it definitely, one thing I can definitely say from my perspective is I feel like things that happened for them were things that I connected with as well. Like all the stuff that I saw and felt were the same things that, a lot of it was the same things that they saw and felt as well. And I think the word that was used was intense, that it was something, and very different from Reiki is the way that it was described. So usually there's kind of a bit to process because when the angelic beings and the guides come in and they are doing this kind of work, it can be a real releasing experience. I've heard of people, again, this is not about my session yesterday, but I've heard about people like having, like, sometimes they'll have a panic attack during it because like something is coming up. You're opening the heart space, so stuff, comes up. It starts to come out. And so that can be an initial clearing that goes on. But, a lot of the techniques used in there allow you to transmute that kind of energy of feeling, maybe depressed, scared, anxious, insecure, and allowing you to turn it into energy that actually helps you, that is productive, that helps you get on with things, get on with life, and that helps you to kind of to be able to take an energy that could be a worry that might drain you, and you might sit there and go, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do, and turn it into an energy that says, okay, I may have something, but this is an opportunity, and I'm going to solve this problem. It's like you're able to rework the energy. I talk a lot about alchemy and reworking things alchemically for ourselves and making that happen by taking, rather than always just getting rid of the negative stuff. And again, it's like anything, there's stuff that maybe we do need to get rid of. One thing we need to always get rid of are other people's expectations. Okay, this feeling that we have to do that somehow what we're doing, because it becomes something where it becomes like I'm worried about my appearance and how I appear to other people, and that's what's really driving what I'm doing and not what's authentic to me. So that's one thing that people kind of need to think about with that. And so that pressure of, well, I have to do this because I think this is going to make people like me is kind of, at the base of it. That's a thing where you need to say, no, I'm confident enough to be who I am. Some people will take to what I'm doing, some people won't, and then that's the space that you might be in, for yourself. It's interesting because that's kind of a space that they talk about when they talk about marketing and marketing yourself, right? They always talk about be confident, be selective, there's that kind of discussion that goes on. But I also feel like it's, we need to, regardless, I think we spend far too much energy trying to fit in socially. That is one thing that does seem to come out of opening the heart space, and I'm just going to speak from my own experience and not on anybody else's, is that you get this sense of sometimes when you feel isolated, when you feel like, okay, we may have a sense, especially if you're somebody who's doing things on their own. There's a lot of people who go out and do things on their own, and perhaps they have a spouse, or they live with somebody, or they have some kind of independent income or something like that, and so this is something that they can do without being concerned about that. If you are in the boat of having to be concerned about that, which really I am, because I'm in the boat of I'm independent, and I make or break myself. Like, I can't turn to anybody else and say, oh, okay, well, you're going to be my safety net over here. Like, there's no safety net. So you're flying wide without a net. And I think for some people that's the scary part. If you've been on your own and then you're trying to do things. And so what can end up happening in the heart space is this feeling of isolation, a feeling of like, I'm alone and I don't have anyone to help me, which generally that's an emotional thing that we can get into, or it's a trigger. Or if we've had a time in our life, maybe where we've been betrayed, or we feel like that has happened to us before, we may just say, oh, here I am. Or you put a lot of work into something and then you feel like, oh, here I am on my own again. And I feel like, so that's what I feel like, that's something that ends up being one of the big things I think that has been addressed with Rouhani for me, is kind of confronting that feeling of being alone, which again, and the reality of it is just that, you're not. There are other people there. There are people who are interested in your helping you and so forth. And there are resources, and that you are a resource in and of yourself. I think a lot of times too, what gets revealed when we open the heart space is the fact that a lot of people sell themselves short, and they think, oh, well, what am I going to do? Or, oh, well, I did this job I hated for 10 years, but it's the only thing I know how to do. So that's what I'm going to do. We sell ourselves short, or we don't look at the skills that we have and say, okay, well, I don't want to do that anymore, but how can I take the skills that I have now and make them work for something else? And again, sometimes when you're just starting out, impatience is a big factor too. And it's not always, sometimes it's understandable, because when you're in a space where, bills still need to be paid, you know that you have things that you have to do. And at the same time, you're trying not to rush into something, just to make money. You have to, there's always a balance that has to be struck there. And so, but a lot of it, first of all, I think centrally, a lot of the message that comes through, I get that devil card in the Osho Zen deck. We have the creator on the bottom of the deck today. But that devil card is the idea that, well, I just either have to blend in with the crowd or I have to follow along. But it's kind of saying, no, you're a lion in your own right. You have your own strength. Lion tends to represent courage. It tends to represent, it can be ferocity. Yeah. It can be that. It can be where we feel like we are in a space where we are, we're feeling fierce and we're not, where we feel like we can be, roaring at people. But I think it's more the lion in the sense of, I can be proud, I can be confident, I have skills, I can set boundaries. Like, you have all of the things. You think about the strength card in the tarot deck. Okay, that's often shown as a woman trying to shut the jaws of a lion. But the idea is that, or sometimes it's Heracles shutting the jaw of a lion, which I think actually has a very different connotation. But nonetheless, you have this idea of being able to work with that inner lion or being able to tame it. There is actually a whole set of meditations. I remember I did them with Sue Coulson over in Avebury. I believe now she's moved a lot of her work for the Cosmic Classroom to Patreon. So, Cosmic Classroom is great if you're interested in working with, lion beings, dragon beings. She works with a lot of that stuff. I know she does crystal skulls and things like that. And being in Avebury, she interacts with a lot of some of these star being kind of energies. And she's a lovely person too. She's just a really great human being. And Sue is, but I had done some meditations with her, and I remember years ago I did a lion meditation with her where we were doing something about like the Regulus star system, and of course Regulus is in Leo, the constellation of Leo. So we have this lion energy, and again, I've talked about this a lot of the time. I'll hear people talk about that stuff, and I go, okay, is this something people are fantasizing about? Is this science fiction? Are people making it up in their heads? And we always think that. There's always a side of us, the very practical side, that's very skeptical, just kind of like, yeah, okay, and I've always kind of been on the fence about that a little bit, because again, there's part of me that is very practical and grounded and kind of just here, and so then when we kind of get into this kind of stuff, you're kind of like thinking, but there have been times when, like I said, I work with somebody, I like them enough, and I'm like, okay, well, you know what, I feel this person has cred, I'll go ahead and do this and be open-minded and just see what happens. And of course, being open-minded is always the best way to approach anything. You don't necessarily need to be gullible. You don't, you're allowed to have skepticism about things. There's no reason why you have to just accept everything at face value, or accept to go along with the crowd. But we had done this meditation, and I was really surprised because not only did I see lions and lion beings, and they actually, and a lot of times I would have visions that would coincide, and Sue would say like, okay, you saw that? Let me tell you about what I saw. And she's not the kind of person who is going to make it up just to, she's totally not that way. And we'll find that we see the same thing or have the same kind of experience. But exactly what I saw, she's like, yep, that's what I see. That's exactly what they look like. And I would have no idea. I mean, there's some people who would talk and they would have, I had visions of this and that. And I'm like, okay. It's not for me to say, but sometimes you always, and I know sometimes people were in that kind of a setting when you're kind of a meditation setting and all people are like, and I was here and I saw this being and they said that to me and they said this to me. And then you're kind of like, okay. Like you feel like somehow either you're not doing it right or are these people making it up or, what I mean? Yeah, people, you can get that if you're, it's better not to compare experiences, I guess is what it comes down to, because everybody's going to see things differently and everybody senses things differently too. But I actually not only saw these lions in the same way that she was seeing them, but I also had dreams about lions after that. I had several lion dreams, so and kind of had them ongoing after that. So I was like, wow, that was interesting. What that opened up. So yeah, sometimes there's things. I mean, obviously you go with your intuition and your gut on something, but if you're curious about something, it's definitely like I said, unless something in you tells you that there's something untrustworthy about the people you're working with or something like that. Otherwise, there's no reason not to be open. Oh, good morning, Melissa. It's good to see you. I was wondering, I'm like, okay, I said, I wonder if I'll be talking to myself for half an hour, but yeah, I was just starting to talk about different meditations, and I was talking about how I was doing lion meditations, and, just kind of the way that I sometimes feel when people do, like, galactic meditations and stuff, and you kind of go, okay, is this for real, or are people just, like, making this stuff up in their head? Like, it's, for me, it was always kind of a mental leap for me. But, I am finding, and also working with Rouhani, too, which is actually supposed to be more of a galactic level kind of system in terms of where it comes from, where the others, my work has always been very earthbound. So working in that kind of extended dimension, I'm going to say. I don't like to say ascended dimension. I like to say the extended dimension has been really interesting. And I'm realizing there is something to it. It's not, and I'm speaking as somebody who is quite skeptical, not completely closed off to it, but also kind of like, And I was just saying it's good to have kind of a healthy amount of skepticism sometimes when you're managing these things. But yeah, a couple of things I was going to talk about today was, one is I mentioned I had like my first Rouhani client yesterday, And yeah, and it was just very, very interesting because as an energy worker for the last 20 some years, like I said, I've been Reiki master since 2002. I had this is something just really different, and again, I don't talk about my clients' experiences. They can tell me, or they can share whatever they want to share for public on their own terms. The one comment that was made though is it feels different from Reiki, but and also the word intense was used. So it's something that can be intense, can be very emotionally intense for people as well. And again, I'm not going to speak about this session. I was speaking a little more broadly about sessions and about other people I know who have had Rouhani. And yeah, it can be a real opening up and a real cleansing, because when you're opening the heart space, sometimes you don't realize what's there blocking you. And it can block a lot of things, not just your interactions and connections with other people, but it can also block your attitude towards success, your attitude towards abundance. It can block your belief in yourself and your ability to do what it is that you want to do in life. But I'll tell you, I've been doing Rouhani self-healing for a couple days. Like I said, I finally got my first client, and I'm really hoping that there's a lot more, because I absolutely, I'm in love with this modality. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't, I could sit here and gush like a, for hours of that. It is really something special. And I realize that there's there's a ton of energy healing modalities out there. And I have friends who are certified in other ones that are different from Rouhani, and Rouhani is not. It's not that it's not done anywhere in the United States. It's just not very common. And it was founded. Yeah, exactly. It's Wow is right. It's just I just can't. It's I don't know. There's things. I mean, if you're doing it strictly by the book, there's things about Rouhani that are a little bit, that to take a little more getting used to. Like, okay, like I know Reiki. We talk about the hand positions, and it's just kind of like, okay, we do this, and then there's this, and down here, and and moving on down the body, and there's hand positions as well in Rouhani. But with Rouhani, it's a little different. It's almost like, okay, so you start with the solar plexus. You start the shoulders. And then you do the balancing of the shoulders, and then you do that. And then you move to the solar plexus. Then you move to the heart. Then you have one hand here and here. Then you have one hand here and here. Then you have one hand here and here. It's very, like that aspect of it I'm still trying to get used to. Although, I've been told, in the end, it doesn't really matter if you miss a hand position or forget one. It really doesn't matter. And good morning, Leela. I was just talking about Rouhani this morning and doing Rouhani sessions, and it's... Yeah, it was just, I just find it from, doing my own things and other people, and hearing about other people's healing experiences, doing it myself. It's just really something that, like when I do it on myself, I'll find that I'll put my hands on the solar plexus, and then when I move to the heart space, good morning, amazing experience, highly recommend. Okay, yeah, it's yeah, thank you. Okay, you're saying, yeah, you were the person who I worked on yesterday. So, but again, I kind of I remember you were saying to me yesterday that it was intense, and that was that's kind of the thing, and it is I just found, like, I was doing it this morning, and just again working here and then working in the heart space, and then kind of get a feel as to where you need to move to. Because for me, I felt like more working in what she calls the Guinea area, the gynecological area, and then working, sometimes in the throat area, and then in different areas. Like you feel, and you see the rays come in, and you feel the energy. And it's weird because the guides just appear, and you're just kind of like, oh, Lord, this particular master is working on this, and this particular master is working on that, and you kind of see and feel this energy come in, and it's not, and then, again, I can talk about it for myself, but then we'll also talk about people, and even in the class that I was in, people would be comparing notes. They would say, oh, I saw this and that, and the person would go, oh my God, I saw the same thing. So it's really, because again, I was going back to what I was talking about earlier, where sometimes when we start moving into these more galactic modalities, that you start to think like, okay, am I making all this crap up in my head? We kind of can fall into that space of, is this, especially if you're an earth sign, you're thinking, is this a little bit, out there, or is this and that? And But yeah, so I don't. But what you find is that as you're doing this stuff, that there is a reality to it. There is, no, it's like, oh no, this is legitimately there, and it's legitimately doing something, and it's legitimately doing something good. Because I have had, as much, I've had Reiki sessions that have been absolutely brilliant and calming and relaxing. And of course, that's really what Reiki is about. It's about kind of making you feel relaxed, making you feel in the body. But Rouhani, the way that it works on the heart space, it's kind of a process. It's like a processing process, right? Where you're going through and you process all kinds of emotions, you process things that are maybe hidden or things about connections, or all of a sudden you may just become aware of certain limiting beliefs. And it actually is able to transmute all that energy into energy that you can work with. So it's intensely powerful, and I'm just so jazzed about it. I love this technique, and I love using it, and I can't wait. I'm hoping I'm going to have I hope a ton of people end up signing up for it. That's why I'm trying to keep it at a very affordable level for people, because I just think it's something that people should experience. So the other thing I was going to talk about today, besides that, because I did talk about that extensively yesterday as well, was about dreams and dreaming, because I am offering a dream analysis class this weekend. And one of the things I do want to talk about a little bit is about, okay, sign up. Okay, very cool. It's meant to say I will sign up. No worries. Yeah, no, I know how it is with the phone. I love it too when you're typing things and then it just changes the words on you and you go, no, that's not what I was saying. That happens to me all the time. I think it happens to everybody, right? But but I did understand what you meant. So that's very cool. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that. So the dream class, which I'm offering this weekend, and I'm keeping it at like $20. I'm trying to move into a model of low-cost education. I'm seeing a lot of stuff recently about and yes, and I know when I started out with a lot of stuff, people were like, well, you have a PhD, you need to charge what your work. And yes, I agree. I have a lot of knowledge. I've spent a lot of years going to school, and I completely get the idea of, get what you're worth. At the same time, I feel like there's a lot of people who say, and my clientele seems to be a lot of people who say, I love what you do, but I wish I could afford it. And I hear that a lot. And so it's like, okay, so I do want to offer certain things. I mean, obviously, when we're talking about a 2-hour class on dream analysis, it's only going to go so far. So we're definitely going to kind of do an overview of dream history and theory. Just a very quick overview. I'm not going to spend hours going into theory and stuff, because that would be a much longer class. That would have to be like a course, rather than in a short seminar. But just going over a little bit so people have the highlights, people know, and then getting into symbolism. And the thing is, the question becomes, because a lot of times people have dreams and they say like, oh, well, it's what I ate last night, or, oh, I was just anxious about this thing tomorrow, so that's why I was dreaming. But the question then becomes like, okay, but why do you dream, and why do you dream in the way that you do? Why do things manifest in our unconscious mind, in our sleep, in that way? And what I think people might take for granted, especially now as people are taking more neurological looks at dreams and things like that, which again, that's interesting. I'm not suggesting that that's not something that is worth looking into, and especially when we see how the body's responding. Certainly early sleep studies teach us about REM sleep and the fact that dreaming tends to happen when we're really kind of close to the level of almost being awake, but we're not quite there. And you have that rapid eye movement. That's what the REM is. And then people can have different experiences. And again, when I talk about the idea that, oh, I have an anxiety about something, so I had a dream, or I ate or took something and that caused dreaming. And that is not, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I was working with someone, actually this person was doing service for me. They were somebody, I was a client of somebody. And this woman had told me that every time she had taken some kind of new supplement or something that had magnesium in it, and I forget what the supplement was for, but every time she took the magnesium, she had violent nightmares. And she realized she's like, what the heck? She's like, what's going on with this? And as soon as she stopped taking magnesium, like the nightmares went away. So there seemed to be a direct connection between those two things. I can tell you that when I would go, and I think I've said this before, like when I drink caffeine, and I drink a lot of caffeine, I would go through periods where I'm like, okay, like my doctors would be like, okay, you're fibrocystic, you're this, you're that, you need to slow down on the caffeine. So I'd be like, okay, fine, yeah, here I am, morning coffee, right? You can say I've given up the caffeine. But I had, so I'd go through periods of time where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go cold turkey. I'm going to get away from caffeine, decaf coffee, if I'm going to have coffee. If I'm going to drink diet soda, it's going to be the caffeine-free type, that kind of stuff. So I would go caffeine-free, and then I would have violent nightmares that night. Because, yes, there can be something in your body chemistry that can react in that way. But here's the thing. It's kind of like, okay, so why but what people just say is just like, oh yeah, that's just because of a chemical thing. And I'm like, but why is a chemical thing producing an image? Why is it producing an image? Why is it just not like you just wake up with a uneasy feeling or something in your body, or a pain somewhere or something like that, or maybe just feeling irritable or anxious? You know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of things that can be a symptom of something interacting with us, or a change that we're making where our body's responding to it. Why does it respond in pictures? People don't really think about that. And it's like, and I also think about that too with people who suffer from dementia and things, or even people who are on the schizoid scale. They see things that other people are like, oh, that person, they're delusional, they're not seeing something. And I'm like, but why are they seeing that? And I find it so interesting that a lot of times people who are in like a dementia stage will see the same kinds of things. Both my father and my grandmother used to see like rats coming out of the walls. Well, there were no rats, but they would be like, oh, you got to take care of those. Or, oh, there's water pouring out of the wall. You've got to deal with that. And, I remember my mother and I with my father the one day, he kept saying, you have to do something. And we just were looking at each other and we're just kind of like doing this, because he's clearly seeing it and clearly he believed that it was there. But it wasn't. So why do these images appear? And so the question then becomes like, what is the psychology of these images? What are they saying to us? And are all dreams the same? Because obviously there are some dreams that may be chemical responses to things. Sleep paralysis might be another one. But I also know that there are people who have prophetic dreams. I have worked with people who have said, okay, I literally saw this entire thing unfold, and then I read about it in the paper and saw exactly how it happened the next day. People do have dreams like that as well. People may have other kinds of premonitions. There used to be a registry back in the 70s that they did, and I don't know if it was based in England or if it was international, but it was like a dream registry, and you could, if you had what you thought was a prophetic dream, you could register it. And what they would do is they would go back, like if there was a big, global event that happened, and they'd go to see how many people had dreams that matched the event. And it was surprising. And these are just regular people. They're not people who identify or feel that they are intuitives or psychics or anything. They just had a weird dream and they registered it. Sometimes people also have dreams that are like warning dreams. So the people who, for instance, getting in a car and they see themselves driving and having a car plow into their car through an intersection. And then they go, ooh, that's a weird dream. And you might think about that symbolically initially first. You might think like, oh, well, maybe I'm afraid I'm going to be derailed by somebody on my journey or something like that. Because there is a symbolic level that you can talk about with that. But then they'll be at that same traffic light and they'll stop and they'll go, wait, this feels familiar. And then they'll hesitate and then a car will come through the intersection. So it was warning them that something was going to happen. So that's different from a kind of dream where you are... where that could be symbolizing just something else about your journey. And then the question becomes, okay, so it's almost like you're jumping in time and it's showing you something that's going to happen in the future. But again, we've talked about how time is not time. I mean, time it's like all time sort of happens at the same time. So, so therefore, sometimes I think you can have dreams that will show you something that is going to happen in the future. It's happened. I've had them too. And I know there's a lot of people who do have them. I can't say that they're common or that every time I dream that's what I'm dreaming about. And sometimes even dreams that are prophetic dreams can kind of be, they can still be veiled in a certain way. For instance, if I have a dream that's a premonition about something that's going to happen to somebody, I might see a person that I know with that name, but it's not but the person that it happens to has the same first name, but it's not that person. Okay, so in other words, like one person is kind of symbolically standing in for another one, which is really interesting. You know, and there's just certain motifs that are regular to dreams. You know, like when you see water in dreams, and depending on how that water is, when you're in a car or when you're taking a journey in a dream. If you dream about falling, if you dream about flying, if you dream about, you know, maybe if you're in a situation where you feel anxious or stuck, or if you're dreaming about, I'm trying to think some of the other more common motifs that we have. There's quite a lot of them, you know, going back to an abandoned building, going back to a place from childhood, looking for a lost thing. Like there's all of these things that are dream symbols. We also might see ourselves in connection to others. I remember having a series of dreams where I was in a room with a bunch of men who were like watching football and stuff, and one of them was doing oracle cards. And that was really, and for some reason this guy who was just pulling like one card was making a ton of money at it. And I'm thinking like, how is this guy making a ton of money just doing that? And then I had an image of one of my academic professors, a male academic professor, who said something like, oh, sort of like I'm the one behind this kind of thing. And he was somebody who I associated very much with, you know, the more traditional religion and things like that. And I'm thinking like, that's interesting because immediately the thought that came into my mind was Apollo, the way that the god Apollo comes in and he goes to the place where the python is. The python it represents that earth energy that has that oracular knowledge, and he kills the python and he basically takes the place of the python. He becomes the oracle, or he has a Pythia who he gives messages to, but Apollo becomes the oracle. So I almost felt like, yeah, that's almost where you have this masculine energy that may be co-opting that feminine energy of intuition, or using it for certain purposes, but somehow in this kind of patriarchal structure, people are gravitating more towards that on the masculine side rather than on the feminine side. And there were other images in that dream too, but that was at least one of the components. And the other parts of that dream were me about like, okay, how are you relating to the masculine here? Or when you have masculine trying to relate to the feminine, that's another way to look at that too. Like, okay, do you have people who are trying to move into that feminine intuitive space? And this is sort of how this is bridging, or this is happening. You know what I mean? So there's, so anytime you have a dream and a dream symbolism, there's different techniques that you can use to try to figure out what it means. Now, sometimes people will like go online and Google and say, what does this mean in a dream? And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, you can, but you have to be careful because you're going to have a lot of different meanings, and that may or may not be the meaning connected to your dream. You have to look at the broader context. You need to look at how you feel in the dream. You need to look at things like that. So I talk about all of that, and we do, if anybody brings a dream, we workshop it. And like I said, I'm doing this just as a kind of a $20 thing, just to get people introduced, see what my teaching style is, and just be able to work with people. I did have a request specifically for this kind of a class, which is why I'm starting with dream analysis, but I'm going to be offering a whole lot of other classes too. So, because I talk about a lot of different subjects. I may be talking about, religion and introductions to religion, but again, it's a matter of trying to let people understand that why it's important for people to know this, that this isn't just, oh, well, that's kind of an interesting thing to know. I mean, in order to understand the context of a lot of things that you're working in, and also the way in which your consciousness is trying to speak to your body or tell you about your body or tell you about something going on in your life, I think these things are all very, very important for people. So yeah, so that's why I'm offering this dream analysis class. I think it's important for people to have some kind of an introduction, if they don't already have one, to trying to figure out what their dreams mean. And this is a subject that's come up for me over and over again, and certainly in my own coaching work. I would be happy to take any of your classes. You're an excellent teacher. Oh, thank you, Melissa. That's very nice. Yes, you've taken a couple classes with me. In fact, so you know my teaching style, and I tend to be kind of like I am here. I'm somewhat informal, but at the same time, I try to be formal but informal. It's like I have a lot of things and I try to structure and organize it, but I don't want to talk about it in this very, highfalutin academic kind of way. I like to engage a little bit because I'm passionate about the stuff that I talk about. So I want to be able to share it in that way. So yeah, that class is actually posted. That's on my transitionlifecoaching.net /events list. But if you go to the website and click on events on the top bar, you'll see where it is, if that interests you. So yeah, so that's cool. Yeah, that's where that is. And I think I put a link to it. I'm pretty sure I put a link to it in my stories too, just so people could. And it actually, on my Instagram bio, if you click on my link, it's the top link on my link tree. So yeah, so there's definitely I just feel it's an interesting topic, and I want to offer a lot more. I also want to open a kind of teaching academy for the humanities. I have like at least 3 or 4 PhDs on board, along with myself, to teach in subjects that are connected to myth and psychology, anthropology, ancient religion, things like that. And some other subjects, things that are relating to gender studies, things that are relating to social and cultural studies, and trying to bring some of this stuff in, because I feel that at the university level, a lot of times the humanities are being disenfranchised because, oh, you go to class because you go to college because you're looking to get a job, and your parents are paying for it, so I don't want you taking any weird religion classes or anything like that because you need to be an accountant. There's a lot of that goes on these days because the cost of education is so high that people feel that they need to show what the return on investment is going to be in terms of a job and stuff. And I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to think. But unfortunately, that means when you corporatize education, it's only going to gear towards what they think is going to make money rather than what's going to enrich you and expand your worldview, which is really what higher ed is supposed to do. It's supposed to allow you, schola is scholar, comes from the word for schola, which is leisure. I mean, it's about being able to, it shouldn't be all about, the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy where it's just food, clothing, shelter. And it's understood that all those things are important, and a lot of people going to school are definitely focused on those. That's like a prime consideration at that time. It's not like they're just like, yeah, I have a ton of money and I can just think about this stuff. But at the same time, the idea is that, it allows you, in theory, it allows you to see different ideas and see the bigger picture. And that really also helps you work in the global community as well. And I haven't been doing my reading, so let me do that. But yeah, so that is something I'm also very passionate about doing, is I want to work in this global space and help people, because kind of help people understand what different ideas are, even when it comes to religion. Like, everybody just thinks about, oh, well, I believe in God and that's what religion is. And it's like, well, or somebody belongs to one of the big 3 monotheisms and they think that's what religion is. And I'm like, well, there's a lot more to it than that. And you look at God this way, but there's people in the world that look at God a completely different way. And the students who take my classes, they usually end it. They start and they're like, wow, I just thought this was just going to be some boring class about religion. I had no idea that all of this is like going on around me and applies to my world. And, same with myth. I mean, it helps you understand other people's ideas, and it also helps you interact with the signs and symbols around you, which is why I think dream symbolism is important, why I think understanding myth is important, because when you understand kind of what the subtext is there, what the script is, that really helps you figure out who you are and where you are and maybe what your next moves are going to be. So anyway, this is a little spiel here on my stuff, but I'm just so excited about everything that's going on right now, so I'm talking about it. All right, let's see what our reading is today for everybody watching. All right, so, okay. Yeah, this is interesting because I was talking in the beginning about Rouhani and the way in which it opens the heart space. And I think one of the first issues that we might deal with, especially if you are somebody who lives by yourself, maybe if you don't have a spouse and you're somebody who is trying to make it without like an additional person there to provide the financing to you or to share the finances. I mean, even people who are married, they're like, I don't want to rely entirely on my spouse. I need to contribute, my half or my bit of it. But we have this aloneness card, okay? So aloneness has a couple of different elements to it. In the one, the aloneness card, okay, there's a couple of different things. Okay, first of all, the meaning of this card is to be alone is not to be lonely. Okay, one of the things we do need to learn is not only how to be alone, but also, as you see, this is a man who has a light glowing from within himself. It's about letting your light out. In traditional version of this card, which is the Hermit, you see the man I think people who are Led Zeppelin fans, like Jimmy Page with the kind of, imitating the hermit where he's standing there with the lantern. And that, what was it? The song remains the same, which was weird. But in any case, but you have the image of the hermit holding the lantern, and you've got the light in the lantern. And the idea is that the hermit has the light, and then it's a matter of letting that light out so that everybody else can see it. So there's an element of that too. But the aloneness card means that you shine your own light. It's not like you rely on somebody else to provide that light for you. You are your own light. But at the same time, as my guru has said, this is not something, if you're sitting on the middle of the tree in a desert, the spirituality that you exude, who's benefiting from it if you're kind of sitting out away from people. So there's the idea of also connecting with people, but being solid in your aloneness, and the ability to be alone and to be satisfied being by yourself and loving yourself enough to be in a space with yourself and not feel and not start beating yourself up, because you know how we'll do that. A lot of people try to keep their mind busy, because when they're not busy, their mind starts coming in and starts like pick. So a lot of times people are like, no, I don't want to be by myself. I want to be distracted. I want to have the TV on. I want to have the radio. I want to be scrolling through the internet. I want to be doing something else. So this is just about the benefits of just that quiet aloneness, which is not the same as loneliness, because when you have that, you recognize not only that you're a light unto yourself, but also the way in which you are connected to the bigger picture and to other people, because nobody's ever truly alone. Okay. And the inner feeling of which we're unaware. Okay. Here's our laziness card again, right? So yeah, I feel like there's an energy here unconsciously of, I have to get up and move on something, right? Whatever this is behind me, the old structure's falling away here. So it's going to be time to get off vacation and kind of move forward into whatever it is I'm going to do. It's not that you're and again, the title of this card is laziness, but I don't think it's that somebody's actually being lazy. I think it's more that people are, we may be comfortable where we are, and so trying to get motivated to be somewhere else is like, really? And especially if we feel like we have put a lot of work in, we're just kind of like, I'm just tired. Can I just like not do stuff for a while? Would that be okay? Like, do I have to still keep moving and still keep pushing ahead? So I think it's more that rather than laziness. It's more like a 9 of Wands than a 9 of Cups. Like, we're tired, and it's like, okay, can I just have the stability that I want? Thanks, and the happiness that I want. But there's an idea that with all the shifts and changes that have gone on recently, it's like, well, we're still being propelled forward. We still need to move forward. And yeah, the external feeling of which we're aware is compromise. So there may be something that in maybe this push to move forward where we feel like, well, I'm going to do my thing, but, I'll also do this old thing, because, and again, we have always kind of have a practical reason for that. And by the way, I'm just going to say, sometimes that practical reason is very valid. I feel sometimes like spirit is almost like, oh, but you should like give everything up and just devote yourself to what you're doing. It's like, oh, but if I don't want to lose my house, then I have to do something else, it's like, it's really funny. I have to tell you, I didn't really do a solstice ritual this year, but I just St. John's ritual, which was last night. This is like St. John's Day. And, it was really funny because it's like I have two spirit guides. I have two guides who I work with mainly, and it's like they're arguing with each other about what I should be doing. One of them like is adamant to me that like, oh no, you should not, because I'm thinking about just just having as a backup supplement, like okay, having some of the kind of work that I can do flexibly from home, that's still something that's on my mind. Because for when things are slower, because I think for a lot of people in this business, things are a little bit slow right now. So I'm like, okay, and they're just kind of like, no, you don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, I mean, show me the money. Like, how am I going to do this? So yeah, sometimes we feel like maybe we're compromising. But sometimes, to be fair, that may be the thing that we have to do. But anyway, but I don't know. I feel also like we're being pushed to do things a different way. So I don't know. So I think for some people, I think we are stuck between that because we don't really want to repeat the old stuff, but then we may feel like, well, do I have another alternative at this point? So there's that kind of stuff. Okay, so we have the slowing down card. This is the advice. So once again, I feel like the universe is telling you, I mean, especially with the aloneness card, there's definitely this idea of look to your inner light and see what it's telling you. One of the things that Rouhani does is that it opens up the ear chakras. And actually, when I did my first self-healing, I think I mentioned this yesterday, I heard a pop in my ears. It was almost like, boom, we're opening this up for you so you can hear what it is that you're being called to do. And so it's almost like, okay, slow down, don't just jump into something. A lot of times when we feel like we have to get moving, when we feel like we're being lazy, we may feel like we need to jump into something. And again, it doesn't just have to be about jobs and stuff. It can be about other things going on in our life too. We may have some kind of crisis that emerges, and if we're somebody who thinks on their feet, we may be like, oh, okay, I got to do this thing. And sometimes what we need to do is actually just sit with it for a little bit. Our outcome card here is healing. So this is the King of Water. And yeah, so there's definitely this energy here of healing. So, okay, so I feel like the overall message that we're getting today is that I think a lot of us may have had a lot of shifts and changes recently. They may have to do with work, they may not. They may have to do with relationships with people. They could have to do with family stuff. They could have to do with spousal stuff, kid stuff. I mean, could be a lot of different things for people. I think changes have affected people in different ways depending on, what's happening in your chart and so forth. But ultimately, we're all in a space where, okay, something old has gone away. We're healing from whatever that was. And so because we're in that space, we want to move and think a little bit more carefully because we're not in the same space that we were before, if that makes sense. And something has shifted, I think, in everybody's lives. And because that shift has happened, it's almost like saying, it's all okay. It would be almost like if you moved house, and let's just say when you lived in the old house, you got up every morning and you took a walk to a place, and let's just say you got a cup of coffee and you did this. It would be like moving to a new house and getting up and trying to do that same routine, but that coffee shop isn't there anymore and the same route isn't there. There may be something different there that you can go to and get, but it's not the same thing. So if you try to do the same thing in the new context, it's just like, oh, and then sometimes when we miss it, we go, oh, I missed having that old thing in the new thing, but you're not in that space anymore. So I don't know if that metaphor is a very good one or if it makes sense, but that's kind of the idea that I have there. So yeah, so that's our message for today is make sure we take whatever the space that we're in, whatever we're doing, take a little time out to figure out what we need to do to be in balance, and do recognize that you're in a healing space. Whatever has been is no longer. You may still be kind of working through that, whether it has to do with ancestral stuff, whether it has to do with just big changes you've made, things maybe you've let go of. This is about you're in a space where you're still kind of figuring it out. So it's kind of saying give yourself permission to figure it out, and you don't have to rush into anything that might compromise you. So anyway, that's my reading for today. It's about 7:17, so we're running a little long today, and I didn't put up yesterday's on YouTube. I'm going to put up both of these on YouTube today. Plus, I've got the Libra through Pisces readings coming up. And again, as I mentioned, my dream analysis class, I'm now doing Rouhani. Check out transitionlifecoaching.net so you can see all of that. So thank you so much. Awesome. Yes. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you for everybody who joined me this morning. Very, very, very glad that we are here, and I like it when I can interact with people, rather than just me talking to myself for 45 minutes. So I'm always very grateful to those of you who join me. Have a wonderful week. Have a good Monday. Like I said, if you're in the Northeast, now things are cooling off. Yay, we can maybe breathe a little bit better. And I will be here tomorrow. So take care. I'll see you. Bye-bye.